Get into systems and understand lines of screens and direct lines of position location calculation. This process of position lines of travels. So everything that I'm saying has already been said through your avatar, not through you. Okay, so everything I'm saying has already been in system position lines of track locations. So getting in that communications puts everything in program. Now how to redirect that and direct in cycles is know exactly how to determine what happens next with our system, right? So everything is setting and all ends all communicate to its position of its program. But we have to understand that the focusing is all levels are setting and location. How do we modify that through triangulation position of its program if we don't take time to identify our systems? Okay, when I say more focused lines of communication, puts you lines of calculation in your settings. Don't know exactly how to use the mind over matter. How do we use the mind over matter? What mind doesn't matter, right? If it matters to you, and it puts you in a frame of confusion and alignment, in truncation to its separation to its confusion. Putting that position as it travels, puts all communication to a system of balance. Balance is everything to the avatar system, right? So we shouldn't get confused in that correlations because the frequencies are reaching higher lines of travels. Points lines of graph or anything communication setting. How to identify that? Identification is everything through vessels. And when you come on my live in position of school, SPACETIMECREATOR, you're automatically connecting not just with the vessels itself, but you're connecting with the avatars of the oversoul of itself. It's done everything in settings. So when you come on my live, it goes through the process of your memory, muscle memory that you're already in position of through navigation. So it's not the connections of you, it's the connections to your vessel of you. You have to get to know you, and that's all levels that come in that positions, right? Once you modify that lines, it gets a lot more easier in track locations, how to use that through your systems. How to use the mind and navigation, how to use the navigations to the brain settings into your hardware and software. It processes your position locations when you come into that through flux, guys. You have a flux capacitor communication screen. This correlates in 3 track divisions, right? 3 cycles, 3 data process lines, coordination setting, compressors, and line condition setting to altitude screen location setting and travel. Then you get a line signal in line condition cross lines, and in position locations, oh my gosh, light bulb. Then you get 3 indicators in position lines to those light bulbs at locations. And then you have, it's really interesting too, because it has a 4-line split. Location of its setting, that's how it's set up. And a light bulb. Track vision lights in a 4-line communication setting, location of structure and design line. Opens up the windows frames. So if you ever look at a light bulb up close, guys, you'll see a window frame inside a light bulb. It's pretty amazing. 40 watt, 60 watt, 80 watt, 120 watt, 240 watt, 360 watt. It's all lines of communication setting that travels. Points lines of graph in the center core system of the mind. Opens up to all the collaboration lines, calculation screen lines, adaptation of its realm, and track case lines at third eye center and travel rotation surface interaction. So if you ever look at a light bulb, look at it really up close, you see the window frame interactions. Directing lines of modification. Now, once you get into that, turns on the light. Let's go through yellow line screens, electrical line communication and fusion, positive and negative. Okay, puts position lines of travels, point lines of graph, illuminates the graph calculation. Okay, so turns on the circuits, turns on the mechanism line screen, high correlation track interference, solar generation screens, and adaptation lines of surface attraction. Position lines of grounds. Now, if you're going to take it out through the equation, you got to correlate the settings, how to communicate to its all frame. I'm just showing you basic understandings and travels, point lines of communication. Let's go through the red and line condition setting, all set location. Let's go through the blue, which is the plasma line, right, which is all protection and direction set locations. Let's go through that travel. Okay, because remember, it's a hologram setting location of its VR system, right? And then we illuminate it, and then we go through the cloak and dagger, which is invisible, line condition of charter waves. Puts all communicates to its system, or you can go through foundation, the rainbow graph calculations, right? But you're bringing it out through equation, right? So what's coming out through calculation setting, right? The position of the flux, right? Everything's on standby, but this is only coming out one particular thing at a time. 3 line cycles, core track interference, go through the black line, screen line, adaptation lines of surface applications of 1, 2, 2 platforms and 3, 3 lines, 4 platforms of 5. Track location line conversion line cycles, cross line screen location and setting. Process communication lines at a 45-degree angle, no split lines of anomaly. Patterns lines, grounds lines, high center interference of a roadway in track location line settings. Operate the cycles, indicate position of its path of a road graphing screen adaptation. Process communication lines ground. This is why I love perspective of everything in settings. Track location line settings, set up structure line divisions into 3 cycles. Circles lines of communication to its position of program. Position lines of power, direct lines of 1, 2, and 3 set locations. Power generation line screens high adaptation line interference into 1 cycle, 2 cycles, and 3 lines of parameter inline rotation surface. Track calculation lines, ground lines, space lines anomaly, timeline sequence into 3 lines, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 23, 24 set locations. Travel, point lines of graph, data highways, process correlations of realms, and data cross lines of box line rotation surface and circuit applications. Open online files, high center interference of travel point lines of graphs, set calculation line settings. Sun and the moon comes in position of its program, waiting on signal, in position location of its router, line position operation surface, and track location to its calculation setting and travel. All through point graph communications, all through flux, all through roadway, all through graph calculations. So I'm just showing you all through a flux how that aligns its signals in a calculation system. Now I want to show you something very powerful where the Mexican team line screen lines, which is on Saturday locations and setting, where we have them coming into their chakra settings. Each chakra has a clocking system. Let's start with the correlation lines, attractions, and direction. Okay, the line set location of grounds. Elimination graphs, what's coming out of the equation, right? Adding new frames of correlation lines, attraction. This is coming out, this is coming out, this is on standby. Right? Understand how to coordinate information location to a setting, right? So, I set these up in position lines of highest interference and clock location of settings of travels. Now, getting line communication settings program. This is already set up in line communication of black graphs, correlation lines of white graph, communication of visible line charts, and direct case settings, high operation surface and travel, point lines of calculation, right? Simulation graphs, simulation tracks, high calculations all lines. 4 line provision lines of cycles. You see the intelligence in each formation lines at the center and position location to its calculations correlation. All right. So line conditions, high center interference, 4 box lines, 3 line rotation flux, correlation line interference, high tracking of flux, direct calculation lines, high center interference of flux, yin and yang, peace line, correlation of track interference, tranquility, line condition mantras, correlation lines, high center interference of flux, communication lines, ground lines, clocking lines of flux, direct lines, modification lines, send location, setting the flux, all through track location. All right. All right, directing lines and modification lines, put all lines of process communication setting to travels. Now, understanding the line communication of the 12 clocking system of a star line, screen line, adaptation lines, set location setting, high position locations, and 3 lines into docking systems. 12 lines of 3, 3 lines of 6, 6 lines of 9, like in setting, star mechanism line, position locations, and system into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, into 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and track location setting. 20 line screens, into line communication setting, position program, open all cycles, open position location, adding frame, position, travels, point lines of graph, communicates to its cycle. Right? Bring in open line sequence. Changing communication lines of grounds. I'm adding things now. Okay, all through frames that's already been set up in line position that changes all lines of communication of travel. So adding signature line screens, setting line communication to its position locations, overline sequence, overline panels, overline communication, cancel these things out. Process communication, energetic dome, line rotation, surface, and traction. Direct line security, position lines of program, location setting of travel, point lines of graph, done. Right? So I'm just going through waving lines of cycles, clocking line communication setting, how everything's set up, location setting, 10 clocking system, 11 clocking system, 9 clocking system, 8 lines, 6 lines, 4 lines. Set lines of 0, 0, 0, 0, 10 lines of 11, 11 lines of 10, 10 lines of 9, 9 lines of 8, and center operation surface and traction. That's a clock. Calculates line interference, has position location of panels, position lines of travels, clocking line rotation surface, and pi generation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. That's a clock. Calculate, modify, and track location line settings, all operations, surface, and tractions. Now, getting direct lines of signals. I did this line calculation setting of 4 track location line settings, years and track locations. Now, this elevator is saying how 1 plus 1 equals lines of 1 equals lines of 3. Sets lines at 2, 2, in line position of 2, puts lines at 6. 12, 24, lines of high center interference. 34, add lines of 2, puts lines at 36 fields in track location. Okay, indirect line signals modification, right? 36 lines to 36 is 72. 72 line condition setting. It's all levels of clocking line centers, 72 line rotation, surface interactions. Puts lines of correlation setting in all levels. Putting lines at 72, 72 is 144 attraction. That my equation, right? So I'm just showing you how these are already set up in all formation of chronological order, right? But it's amazing when you have it in chronological order, you can bring it into a new frame of traction. So I'm just showing you exactly how powerful it is and how you see these things in all frames, right? It's all lines of 1,000 implements and high correlation setting of data sheets, data formations, data prints, data line condition setting, data formation screen lines, adaptation lines of server locations and high center locations. Copy and paste anything through enabled and line condition enabled, line rotation cycles. Have been modified in-track location line system. Process communication setting to all operation lines of surface. Puts all information settings and all levels of travels, all through information system. Okay, so I'm going to just show you all formation line grounds. Now, getting that position location is understanding the basic grounds of the brain. Brain circuits, its correlation setting of wavelength cycles. Understand the brain, the circuits, and correlation setting the electrical system into your data ports. Data correlation lines of cortex, direct lines of syntax, calculation lines of codecs, direct modification lines of cycles, and generation screen lines of high center interference. Process communication settings know exactly how to integrate the communication system, how to lines of signals, how to modify the system and power settings. Put all operation cycles and high correlation setting and travels. Puts everything in a formation line grounds. Right? Everything is a frequency line screen location setting that puts all levels of operation surface in track locations. Okay, I'm just showing you exactly. Every time I look in this, I can change the frames, or I can just keep it as it is, or I can delete it, or set it this way, or set it that way, frame it this way, set it this way, erase it, correlation, triangulation, line settings, high operation surface. There's nothing you can't do through the mind until you understand the operation location of frame. Correlate lines of highest interference to see everything through a simulator and know exactly how to do it through a data processing line calculation screen lines and high correlation. Coordinates lines of communication line screens, all adaptation lines of surface. Okay. Now there's one particular line screen, which is extremely powerful. When you see it, it really puts perspective in everything, how you're supposed to see things through the eye lines. Puts everything in provision lines, calculation lines of the cycle lines, high correlation setting, psychosis locations, psychological connections, high center interference, direct lines and eye lines, all travel and position lines of graphs, and direct line signals in position location to a system. Process all communication to your settings and how you use your travels calculation line position program. Everything set position travel lines, all levels of travel, pointing lines of graph in a 24-line cycle that's already done through its equation. Puts everything in perspective and all levels of calculations. So getting that direct line of sights puts everything in balance, people. Okay. Now it's important you understand how this all works in travel. Okay, because when you see these frames, it changes everything of the mind. Oh, I've seen that before. Right? So you have to know exactly where did you see that before. Fast forward, rewind. I'm just giving you basic grounds, how the brain actually works and intricate and positional process, the data process line settings, puts everything in the location setting, how you use it through the alpha and connection line centers of delta and theta and your omega. Zeta, zeta, gamma line radiation, all levels on calculation system, all track line provision. Okay, gets all position travel lines. Points lines of graph, communication center interference, puts all communication setting in process calculations. Clocking system and travel point lines of graphs. Okay. 48 lines of factors, clocking line centers at 3 lines provision, right? So it's really interesting how 1 point lines of 1 equals lines of equals lines, correlation lines, highest center interference, and program location setting in terms of awareness attractions. 48 lines of trifactor, in line condition setting, 72 all lines of clocking, line rotation, surface, and traction. Right? Now, if I change the frame, it changes everything with clocking system, right? So it's really interesting when you understand time frames. That's getting correlation track interference and position programs. Check this out in travel. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Right? Waiting on signal to change frame. Now, if I change the frame, it changes everything through its picture, changes everything through its frame, changes everything through its past, present, and its future setting. Right? As soon as I add the equation, it changes everything through its structure of design. So basically, we got in those position locations. Now it's all levels of memory reset and travel point lines of graph and calculation screen lines adaptations. Memory communicates line center interference into all line rotation surface, in track locations in Dolores Canyon, where she was in the outer rings, in sector 12 in track location, where it is. Let's bring it back in center calculation lines where she was in track location of center operation. Boom. Okay. So it's all a memory. It's a muscle memory, which you guys already know. And the more muscle memory puts everything back where you're supposed to be. Right? Now you put yourself in position of the hour lines, the correlation lines of the seconds and minutes, puts everything in frame of balance. How you use it through seconds, minutes, and hours, or hours, minutes, and frames, or seconds, lines, calculation setting. You do what you want to do. Is it space of a line? Is it timeless line position? Is it formation? Is it motion, motionless? You do it through its framed position lines as travels. Puts everything in perspective and how you see yourself in all track location. Right? It's all levels how you use the mind and all lines of communicate to its setting. Process, position, of travel, point lines of graphs. Now, it's really understand that 0 equals 1 line center, and the systematic lines equals lines of correlation, lines of power. Direct lines of high center interference, the DX lines of line position of travel. Points lines of setting, docking line screens, high center interference of travel, point lines of graph. So if I change the frame, it changed the structure, it changed the division, it changed the past, it changed the present, and it changed the future. Okay? So I'm just showing you exactly how powerful it is to recognize these things, right? So you don't get lost in transition, lost in translation, or lost in confusion, or separation. Get in a line position of travels, point lines of calculation to its setting. Okay? Understanding the correlation lines of the rebellion. Okay? Understand the formation lines of grounds, location, setting. All lines of high center interference and high communication system. 16 lines of 9 lines of setting line interference, of 3 lines of 6 lines of coordinate travels and point lines of graphs into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines of communication of travel, point lines of graph communications, right? So it's kind of like I'm understanding my frames now and I have to go back in time. Getting that position lines, you go back in sequence of time, correlations of time, track locations of time, obstacle lines, communications of time, high center interference and high position of travel communication lines of time. Okay? Understanding the travel position lines, a high operation line sequence of high communications of time. If I add communication line screens, I add cycles of high center and location system, process communication lines at ground lines, operate the cycles, operate the system, operate the center, correlation lines of frame. Change the frame, change the course, change the tractions. Change the direct signals and modification. So stays in position location system, but it's now it's a new frame line calculation setting, right? So I'm just showing you exactly why it's so important and what the brain does, guys. Okay, it's kind of like going over these things, you know, going back to these things, understand how to go forward, how to rewind, past. Understand the past. It's just a line condition setting, which is all of a sudden an echo. The past, the position is the present and the future. So there is no past, there is no present, there is no future. It's just the now of everything. I mean, it's all timelines all at once. Once you recognize that, then you understand how to use your position location, what your brain is trying to understand you, and modification line settings all through clocking system. Right? So everything that I see is already in chronological order. So it's my job if I want to change the algorithm. It's my job if I want to change the past, present, and future. These are the things that you can do once you reach higher levels of the mind. Now, you can't alter something that's already done, but what you can do is add the past, the present, and future, how you want it to be in your system of your own binaries and settings. So what you're doing is you're creating an algorithm, creating a website of how you want the past, the present to be, but you can't change what's already done through alteration. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand these things. Okay, because the brain works in so many lines of intricates. Understand the cortex, codex, line calculation setting, how to use that position location to sim. Has a codex line screen, codex lines a modification of files. Each file indicates position of its program and sets communication lines and settings. What you understand in files and communication system, life gets a lot more balance in track locations, especially when you come into coloration line screen location setting. Process line screen highest interference puts everything in a formation location and grounds, but it's very powerful. Going back in time. Okay, all this is back in time, right? All through an 8 central line connection setting. So it's showing me exactly where I'm in chronological order of and how I want to change the frames or keep it as it is in line connection setting. Waiting on signals, line calculation setting. So it's like getting a photo op or a folder and then looking at it and then putting it back where it is in chronological order. Now, if you change position, you change folders, or you base the locations, you're adding frames now. You got to be careful how you do that in position lines of travels, but you can't change something that's already done. Just to know that through identifications. All lines have communication setting, all of the point graphs have communication. Okay? So it's amazing. If I get a correlation line screen in direct lines of cycles and add a blue line, that changes all levels of graph communication. Right? It changes the travels, it changes the points, it changes the communication setting interference location of its brain frequency patterns. Right? Because it's a different line of an image now. That image it changes lines of communication system. Right? But it's very powerful once you understand how to identify that through set calculations. All right. So, but also too, you have to have friends in relation to partnership. Everything that you do, you don't just take your finger and just do this and do this without knowing what you're doing, right? Because you're connecting to something that's creation that you created or the intelligence created. So you have to have confirmation. So you have a continuous force and know exactly how to prolong that setting location to its VR system. So truly understand how to use the basic rounds of its frequencies or any of the lines that case its energetic pattern that puts everything in process of communication, setting, and travel and correlation of configuration line connected to the rainbow graph calculations, right? So anything they add equation, right, is disturbed, but you have to modify the system and travel point lines of graph. So I'm going to change the communication setting that travels, okay? So I'm just showing you exactly why you have to understand the points of what's going on with your brain inside correlation. Change the graph communication travels. And we're going to change the red line cycles and line rotation surface since location. Direct lines modification, one cycle line center line interferes with two line settings. Position lines of security line, division line, rotation surface, and tracking measure. Okay. Okay. So it's in a new frame, a new correlation lines, attractions and directions, right? But I had collaboration with it, partnership. Okay. Okay. So that's all based on what it is. So you don't get lost or confused or oh, I can't remember this, 5-10 minutes ago because I lost myself. I can't remember myself. I can't remember my name of myself. I can't remember information of myself. I can't remember the communication of myself. I don't remember my thoughts of myself, or I can't remember what I said to myself, right? It's all formations of balance. So I'm just showing exactly when you go back in time, how it center lines its communication setting to its program's application your system. Okay, it's very powerful. It's all formations of its energy. But it's all in chronological order. But as soon as you change those frames, you change everything in setting. Okay. So setting that position of travel line puts lines a high communication setting to its position of its program. So I'm just showing you I've done thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of settings and location of structures and schematics all through primer. Everything's set up in chronological order, right? Everything I give you is in chronological order. 2, you have a chart to understand location and sequence, location and pi, generations. Understand what that is in vessel communication and all through traction, right? So there's so many ways of looking at this, isn't it? But it's very powerful. When you add the equations, you change the formation location of its structure, of its design, of travel. Okay, you're changing the travel right away. Okay, point lines of graph and position. Now I can go through blue, I can go through red, or I can go through white. I'm automatically changing it, right? It changes the structure of division lines of center correlation. Okay. So you have to get balance with that too. Because you're reaching higher levels of the mind. Specification lines and all lines of species line core track interference just has to really get into the holographic cities, into their foundations and their clocking settings. All right, higher levels of clocking line system. If we get a track visualize the chakras and you get 114 line screens, you have to understand that through each chakra. Each coordinate, high correlation lines map, has its understanding of its own geometric operation design, geological, geographical, and geometric. Now that position lines this process and position lines of travel. Points lines of signals and puts everything in position location of balance. Now I'm just showing you exactly how powerful it is once you start identifying that in your position locations to your settings. Understanding the framing system, you understand the correlation settings, high correlation lines of track locations, and provision lines of cycles, and direct line signals, and high correlation setting high positions calculation, direct lines of modification, all line communication system, understanding your drawing techniques, understand information lines, understand schematic lines and communication lines of color, and all track location provision. All through calculations, right? So it's really interesting. Once you understand more lines of the collaboration, what it's trying to understand, what it's drawing, and why is it drawing these things all through its equation. Okay? It looks like art, but it's amazing what it really is. Okay? And once you change it, it changes everything of its space and time. See, it's already changed already. See, it's already changed its direction. Now, if I add color to that, right, what is it changing? Its emotional system, its emotional tract, its patterns behavior, its pattern recognition right away, right? So, trying to get you guys to understand these things so you understand the formation, how it comes out, levels of correlation, into color. Color is extremely important, right? Because it connects the highest locations and settings. You're putting things together. You understand the connection of your navigation lines to your vessel. You understand how to use your light web and your dark web and how to put it all together in line, position, location to its setting through reference. Reference, you're going to hear a lot. Okay. Interference, you're going to hear a lot. Okay. Now, you have to understand how this all works, informations, all through colorations and patterns. Pattern recognitions of everything. Alpha, line conditions, delta. What does alpha mean? What does delta mean? What does theta mean? Okay, what is omega? What is zeta, zeta, gamma? Right? What does that all mean? Why is it so important to understand these things? Well, it's all about understanding how to use it through your energies, your vibration, your frequency, and your harmonics, guys. Right? But it's very important to understand what you're structuring as all lines that communicates to its system, has a source of recognition and calculation line screens that puts everything in modification and setting to your primers. How to use that through the odd and even. How to use that through positive and negative. Understanding that position, location is travel. Points, lines of communication setting all levels of balance. Puts all that information in screen lines, adaptation lines of calculation to its setting through its surface. Puts all that information in screen lines, adaptation, calculation, modification, interference. Puts all levels of modification, screen lines, adaptation lines, and calculation. All right. So I'm constantly talking, but I'm going through each frame. All right. Talking to each intelligence on this. Right. What it is. So getting balance of that is understanding the mind and the speed and the limits that it goes in frame lines of communication of seconds, minutes, and hours, because it points, tracks, location, settings, and all can be modified. Getting that line communication lines interference, getting all that information location to a system, all through calculation setting. Okay. So it's pretty powerful stuff when you go, wow, this is incredible stuff. This is starting to make a lot more sense now. You understand the chronological order, why you're seeing these things, why you're structuring these things in a particular space of time. Okay, modifications, timeline sequence, time coordinates, time divisions, time lockings, time patterns, edit space, bend space, modifications of space, slow down space, free space. There's so many things that you can do in track applications. Again, that positional setting. See? It's just knowing exactly what you're connecting to right now, correlation. So, and understand your finger points and how powerful it is when you identify each finger and what it is in position locations. If we get a track line, let's go through line signals. Okay, I'm just showing exactly how this is all set up in track location. Okay, let's get in cycles. Okay, let's get in data formation lines. Okay, platforms of 1, platforms of 2, data position of 3, and position of 4 settings. Okay, track location settings. All right, so we've got a zero ground into one line cycle. Now, I want you to understand the test is based on what you already know, right? We already know that through technology. But you understand the binary and the transistors and resistors and how to put the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols into shapes, how to put it into formation lines and graphs. If you get a 0 lines of 1 and a 4-track revision, okay, or you get a 2-track revision lines of 0, 0, 0 in one setting, or you get line communication lines of 3 weather patterns into a position of triangulation, or you get another box line in position locations in one atom. Okay, so that's all done in inside locations to the vessel, right? So one atom lines of 3 lines of rotation, surface, location, line condition setting, blocking system triangulation in position over crosses line sync calculation. Calculus lines of data, screen lines, and flux in line position of 3 lines of calculation. Points, lines, and graph, 0 correlations, 0 calculations, 0 line position of 1 center and rotation surface. This is all done from inside, 3 atoms and molecules and cells. All right, so what your cells and your atoms are doing are basically setting up an assembly line of a factory, trying to set up positional travel lines. Why you guys have to understand how important it is to understand your cells and why you have cells, what do cells do, what do the atoms do, and what do molecules do. Well, trying to get you guys to understand these things, because what it's doing is creating your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions of your programs. Okay, it's putting it all together through assembly line. So they keep doing what they're doing in line position locations. You don't know offline communication setting. You want to have any resistance and correlation. They know exactly why they're inside of you. So when you get the energy and the information, it's creating schematics, and the schematics goes to the atoms, goes to the molecules, goes to the cells, goes to the protons, electrons, neutrons, and photons. But they all work together, right? But they're all in position or chronological order working together, okay? They don't formulate in a cluster like this. They work together, all together in sequence, in patterns, in navigation, and data formations of grounds, high operation lines of service. That's what they do in line position nodes calculations all the time, right? Okay, so we had a center core setting. Now the cell lines, let's go into wall line screens. These are the cells, okay? Okay, I'm just showing you exactly what cells do and what cells look like, okay? Cells are wall dividers, and they connect to high interface data formation lines. They create bridges in correlation lines of attractions and set calculations, right? So let's get two lines of patterns. These are just cells. Atoms stay in the center line condition setting. I'll show you up close up. But these are the cells. These are the dividers, electrical grids, electrical panels, electrical line keys, high interference, right? So cells are basically line connecting, high interference. Set position locations. I'll show you exactly what the cells are. All right, so let's go through an outline screen. That's the cell, right? The atoms are here in position in correlation. Right, these are the atoms. Okay. All right. You can position lines of atom cross line screen through an outline screen. Modificates line one cycle, line condition setting to a program line condition setting to a molecule, 3 line divisions in 1, 2, and 3 track location. Crosses calculation line, ground line, center interference of 1, 2, and 3 line connection setting programs. Creating lines of 3 lines and position across lines of 6 in position and lines of 8 in track location. So all it's creating is what's already created. Okay, so this is a format of a hologram screen. Now I have a direct line signals and line position location of its position. Process calculation of the line centers in one setting and position locations of 2 measures in the line condition of its tubing and track location. See, that's all it's creating inside of you, right? When you get in schematics, it's creating a primer. Everything has a primer. Everything has to have a primer. Everything has to have an indicate to its primer. But it's all connected to what the atoms, the molecules, and the cells are doing inside your system. It's creating all lines and highest interference, how you speak, the volumes that you speak, the mass how you speak, the correlations how you speak, all right? The electrical line condition setting, the colossus how you speak, okay, is how everything is done inside correlation setting instructions. So getting direct line signals, you get modification lines of atoms, going into delta, highways and travel, okay? Process communication of code weaving, code cross line calculating lines, narrow links, and core track location of data highways and track location. Direct lines of modification lines of center. We open up the atom line, center line, core line, track line, provision line, cycle line, high correlation lines of track location. Process communication lines of ground line center interference, puts lines of communication ground center interference in the line connection setting. Now, that's where the protons come in, and line set location. One setting indicate line interference of 3 lines of waves, and a line condition lines of 6 lines of wave, and line condition setting through pi. Okay, process communication. Getting the ground line size interference, putting line condition setting molecule design lines at 3 lines of waves. Inside record lines at alpha, let's go into delta. Okay, delta, and get into theta here, and we go into mega. And zeta up here in travel, point lines of graph communications, right? Different lines of wave and correlation line track interference. So the atoms and the molecules are constantly creating line condition setting in plasma. Plasma screens, plasma walls, plasma detections, travels lines of direct lines modification cycles. Direct lines of platforms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in set locations, right? Travel correlate lines. Now that line communication setting communicates lines of projection coming into the sun, line setting high interference. This is the sun in rotation surface interaction, right? Communication lines high interference into the moon. Process communication lines to your projections of projector of calculation setting of travel. Very complicated stuff, right? But this is what goes inside your body through the atoms, molecules, and the cells. They're putting lines of teleportation screens. They're putting operation lines of cycles. So getting into that position, it gets a lot more understanding through string theory, understanding your planet surface, understanding location setting, correlation, track interference. Each atom is communicating to each mole. Line condition setting, right? It's core track interference, okay? Setting correlation lines and malware, correlation line interference. We got that track line, calculation lines, interference, high track position lines, and calculation position operation lines of surface, right? Calculation lines of the mind, awareness locational levels, into levels of width, communication lines, and high calculation of awakening. Remembering cycles, correlation lines, and energy track location, malware. Direct lines of cycles, direct lines of system, direct lines modification line, highest interference of travel point lines of graphs. We got calculation line interference in position location of 1, 2, 3 in track lines, 3 zeros in line rotation surface and travel. Points lines of graph calculation lines of traffic lights, direct lines modification lines of 1 cycle, 1 division, 1 rotation, 3 lines of communication setting, cross line signals, position location of platforms. Direct lines modifications, all you're doing is you're creating platforms in travel, in point lines of graphs, in set location of atoms, molecules, and cells. And what are they doing inside your location setting of travel point lines of graphs? Okay? That's all it is. So getting in position location is know exactly what they're doing is they're setting up a film strip. Okay? Now, it gets more complicated now because all you have to understand is the window frame. Okay? And what's in the film strip of the window frame that's put in position of process, right? Getting in that position lines of grounds, 2 grounds, 3 grounds, and 4 settings and setting, or position of 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location. All right. See, this is the primer. Always the primer is in the center. Always in the center. Always, always in the center. Then you get graph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. There it is. Boom. At a 4-line different angle. All right. All right. So center core lines of graph and center position of platforms sets communication setting and position of its program location setting to a cerebral. Direct calculus along ground shift lines across line screens into line position location setting, all levels of operation location setting, and travel point lines of graphs. Okay, there it is again, right? Getting in that position line highest interference, you cross the signals into data highways, 3 lines of 4 track location into 5 settings, right? So you work with 4, you can work with 5, you can work with 6. But you have to understand the platform crosses line signals and line condition setting to its operation surface and traction. Direct modification lines, cross line signals again into the lines of 3 split lines of anomaly. Communication lines of ground centers, 1 rotator, 6 correlation lines of ground set location lines to your earth and track location. Direct modification lines of ground lines, higher highest interference, platforms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in set locations. Direct lines of highest interference and platforms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 set location. Okay? How that's set up is through operation. All right? Now, illuminate the graph target lines and line interference when you take ionospheres, line condition setting, or line communications of data formation screen lines, adaptation lines of service. You go into security lines of balance in 1 center correlation lines of traction. Right? So you just bring up the center operation, start with that correlation line settings, all through its operation surface. Okay, because that's what you're taking out through equation, right? And it comes out through calculation setting. It's coming out, right? This is coming out. This is all on standby, right? Visionary cortex is understanding how to use the central setting to position location of your brainwave pattern or the location of your system. Let's go to the core track interference. Let's start with the ground lines, earth line rotation surface. There's the earth. Okay. Track calculation lines of 3 lines of split line of anomaly. Position lines are correlation lines of position location of powers in 3-line communication of 4 settings and wave and line cycles of traction. Calculation lines of flux in line condition setting. All right, so it has its own command center, its own command ship, its own program location setting, all levels of operation surface and traction. All right, getting modification lines of grounds, operation lines of surface into an XC1000 and travel. Okay. Sets ground line surface location setting in position location of power in flux capacitor communications crop circle. Directs modification lines, cross lines, platforms, line condition setting to position of its program. 45-degree angles in the split lines anomaly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations. Direct calculus lines, Process line signal, right? Sets communication lines and grounds. Operation line server case sending to another XT1000 above signal. Process communication line grounds. Now, what do we bring it out through equation? That's that green line cycles into 3 platforms into 3 line rotation surface interaction. Directs lines, modification lines, bring in the green lines, in position location to red centers, line operation surface location to system, and all 3 calculation. Getting direct lines, highest interference, coming to all position locations in white, and line condition setting over blue and track location. Now, once we get into the blue lines, all 3 lines of patterns are coming out, lines of 3 XT1000 in the platforms. It can be casing setting. Now it's coming out through this equation, right? Now you can really see it coming out, right? So I'm just trying to show you what the atoms, molecules, and the cells do. They create imagery in your film strip. And it gets much easier once you understand how to put that all together, right? How to put it all together, right? Now, what that does is basically you have to understand what the brain is. It's the circuitry line and positional settings that puts everything all together. Putting that all together is understanding that it's a hotel with billions and billions of rooms. Getting that core line of high interference location to its energetic dome. Let's go through cross screens and direct signals. Process communicates split line anomaly in a 3-line rotation surface, right? Umbrella, ground sound line interference and application setting that travels. Okay. Process communication lines is center line, operation surface, and ground lines operation calculation. Process communication lines and astral projections of astral travels and correlation lines of traction. So gets line communication of flux and line connection setting to its position of its program, outlines its signals, line connection setting and position locations to its intelligence information. Okay. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand, the more you go into the mind, the more it comes into formation of vision. And as the film strip comes in setting, the atoms and the molecules in the cells create the film strip of its image that coordinates the system line connection setting that puts the projector of the projection of the light of the calculation of the sun to the moon together, that puts a process position location in your system and all calculation line connection setting to its program and position. Okay? Now you understand why you have atoms, molecules, and cells? Just atoms, molecules, and cells, right? Setting routers and routers is online position location to its system, but you understand why you have cells in your body and what they're doing, right? There's no difference when you get in correlation lines and calculation lines, how to use your numbers, right? You look at a box frame. Okay. Does that look like a box frame? No, it doesn't, does it? See, it fooled you, right? So its position lines of highest interference. Okay, inter-application lines of 3 settings and 3 set locations. Sets lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And track location lines into 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation surface and traction, right? So you're never going to see the line communication highest interference when it comes to power or anything through generation screen. You guys have to formulate your film strips in your own formulas of its equations. 4 split lines anomaly, a graph calculation, screen lines adaptation, right? Process 1 lines, 3 lines, 4 line track location. Cross line signals, 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location setting. Calculation of ground centers, operate the system. Now, this is where you add the line communication setting to its position of its program. Process line communication grounds, process communication lines of magnetic, highway, and formation lines, high correlation setting interactions into Merkabah tesseract and tetrahedron as set design and correlation. Very complicated stuff, right? So, line condition setting. Atoms sets the routers and routers in center core system. Okay? They keep the ground lines and rotation surface attraction, circulation rotation to the earth, right? They keep the ground centers. Now, there's 3 power generation lines. High correlation lines of highest interference and travels. Point lines of graph communication and 3 lines of cycles. Okay, so that puts everything in position location in torical fields. Plasma lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface and traction. Now, getting direct lines has an open sequence. Inline condition, it's like a fishbowl that comes into its operation surface and traction. This is all created through atoms, molecules, and cells. Okay? So all you're creating is platforms. That's all you're creating of travel, right? Getting that position lines of high correlation setting to travel communication setting position of its operation surface. Right? All right, then we go through the graphs. Let's go through the basic grounds. All right, so Atoms can be anything in a formational line. It's knowing exactly what you're doing through intention, all right? There's an atom like in the center, so splits, lines, anomaly, correlation lines, attractions. There's so many ways of looking at this, the coordinates, and the line position location of its program. What it's doing through its travel, right? Then you got the cells. Think of the cells as a ring graph. Okay, cells are moving in line settings and line conditions across line screens. String theory, line rotation settings, or track location of your system, all through dimensional wall setting. Okay. So what your cells are doing is protecting of its image and correlation lines of attraction inside calculation, right? So cells are the outer line, atoms are the in cycle, and the molecules are the structure line division. Okay. So atoms in line condition setting, circle lines of correlation. Remember, it's all levels of GOD. Molecules are the 3-line calculation setting, putting lines of communication together, right, into triangulation, right? Data processing line position location to its position of its program, right? Atom line circulates and rotate in center, okay? I can coordinate in line condition setting position process, right? Atom line, center core system, in another atom, crosses lines to another atom, cross lines to another line condition setting to all levels, in a portal communication lines of travel and set location. So I'm just showing you how this all works. Now, putting that all together is understanding the film strip. Look at this equation line setting. This is a film strip right here. And it's broke down and the line condition setting to its position of its program setting. It's broken down, right? See? It's broken down. So that's what it is. You're breaking it down in files, just a film strip, right? So putting that film strip together, then you come in position of the sun, and then you come in position of the moon through projector of projection. Okay? Gets much easier when you understand the film strip and design. But you understand why you see these things. How are you seeing these things, right? The brain is intricate and all calculated modified. It's nothing but a box frame of many billions of rooms. Okay, so it's trying to understand the circulation and rotation line condition setting to position of its process in calculation lines. Split lines anomaly. Okay, so the actual brain is amazing how to use the tool set and track location. So it's a split lines anomaly, but it has no split lines of center. So it correlates the track interference into all levels in an turning line screen and adaptation lines of surface and location. It's the most powerful thing that you have inside correlation lines of attractions. Understand how to use the electrical system. Okay? So the actual brain itself knows exactly what it is, so it's mind system, all through collaboration and traction. Boom. Okay? Very complicated stuff. And so, getting that position lines of centers puts everything to the atoms, molecules, and the cells. Once you understand how to use the cells equals lines of the atom, correlation lines of all line communication of the molecule, right? What do we got? CAM, right? Sets correlation lines of high center interference at E-line centers. Oh my gosh, what's going on with here? Put an R-line setting to an R-line interference location camera. Correlate to track interference line candle location setting, compute system, 2 panels. Equals lines, correlation lines of panel line, equal lines of correlation lines of 2 settings, operate line calculation awareness, and 3-line provision lines of cycles. Remember, it's the travel. It's the travel. It's out of the dimension lines of travel. Stop looking at the hand and start looking beyond, right? Metric meters, lines of correlation lines of travel, lines of E-line rotations, and remembering cycles, lines of its awareness and set location of travel. 3 correlation lines of attractions and division lines of correlation setting interference into Earth line rotation surface and track location. Okay, so it's all about understanding how to put the conditions high center interference into the atoms, into the molecules, and into the cells, right? CAMERA, camera, right? All through that setting. Changing location lines and molecules, change line condition setting to its awareness, change all communication lines of high correlation setting to travel, 3 graph communications. So, that's what I want you guys to understand, because you have atoms and molecules and cells, and how to use that through a formula's equation is all indicated through a ring graph. Let's go into zeros and ones. Okay, we've got communication lines of zeros and ones, right? Now, you have to understand the communication lines is zero line, one atom line setting. There's the atom in circulation rotation. Now, it's communicating lines of 1 in position of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations, right? Calculates the lines, ground, line center interference, electrical fence, and line position program. It's electrical line fence. It's a location of web, right? It's a webbing system. Track position lines of cycles, 0 lines of correlation, in 1 calculation line setting. Process calculation line positions program. Now, we change the platforms in line condition setting to a molecule design line that puts the line communicates to setting travels and point lines of graphs inside correlation lines of calculation setting to your solar plex. Now, direct lines of platforms comes in position lines of setting and position of 4 settings and travel into the cerebral cortex lines of design. Process communication lines of grounds into 1 cycle into 4 centers as application. Process communication lines of grounds, 0 lines operation of platforms 1, 2, and 3 settings. Center course settings, line conditions of tubing, and 2 line rotation surface and track location lines of its earth line surface in line division and location setting of a triangulation line communication of its position of its program. Okay? So I'm just showing you what you can do through the atoms and molecules in the cells. So all you're doing is you're creating an algorithm. So that's what the calculation of the cells are doing. You have to understand how to use the information location through structure of design lines of visionary cortex lines into your calculation system, all through your placebos. You have to understand what that means. What does it mean? Because it means something different to everybody else. Placebo is not a placebo until you understand what a placebo is to you. It's got to modify you through formula. It's got to absorb through you through calculations. That's how it comes into your own algorithm of your own formula of own equations. If I say stop, stop means no. If I say go, go means stop. If I say stop, stop means house. It could be anything it wants. See, you guys got to get out of those equations. That's what you got to understand. Because the atoms and molecules of their cells are very confused inside your body. They don't understand what you're doing in track lines. They don't need to understand themselves. You have to understand why you have molecules, atoms, and cells in your body. And once you understand that, life gets much more easier through the dietary system, the immune system, the nervous system, or the correlations and interactions. Understand how to use your white cells, location of your red cells, location of your settings, with your atoms, molecules, okay, and to protons. Now, what is that no correlation lines attractions? What is that lines? Width, A, line can setting travels. Oh, we got R there. Oh my gosh, look at that warp. Warp. Okay, so you have to understand how to put a position lines at center. Getting in that communication setting that travels, point lines of graph communicates to a system, all through calculate modify. So getting that direct signals puts everything in process communication settings because you understand more lines of you, how to use your formula, how to use your transistors and resistors to your binary, to your algorithm, to your system. Okay, to understand how to use that through modifications, right? So it's important you understand how to put the letters, numbers, shapes together and what does it mean to you? Because it doesn't mean anything else to anybody else. And what does it mean to you? You've got to find that. You've got to find that collaboration and partnership. Why you have atoms, molecules, and cells inside your body and how it works for you. Because it works differently with everybody else. Because why? They're at a different lines, at different communication lines of DNA attractions. Everybody's a different DNA, but they're all lines of communication lines of formula equation, like puts everything line communication in the web. Travel recognition. Travel recognition. All right. So, all right. So I think we're on point here. How powerful it is, why you have these inside you, how to recognize that, right? How to use that in information because it's a semi-line and in a position, it has a mechanism line screen and it doesn't understand the adaptation lines of surface. It's going to push it out and travels and say, listen, you're not supposed to be here. The chemistry line is not right. Matter pattern recognition is off. Calculate lines, screen lines. You need to leave, right? So it's about understanding that you don't want to disturb everything that's in chronological order in your system. You don't want to disturb your assembly line. All you want to do is just keep your body information location in balance, quiet the mind, calm the souls. Get out of all communication system of its program, know exactly how to operate the system and travels in coordinates and travel and communications. Because your body's never here, but it's always here all at once. It's never been in a certain lines of communication system. Your connection to your vessel is everywhere in all lines of communications, but you have to understand how to use the atoms, the molecules, and the cells inside your body through travel, because it's constantly doing exactly what it needs to do. It doesn't need to identify you. You have to identify your vessel and why you have atoms, molecules, and cells inside your vessel, okay, through communications. All right. L setting into an atom. Okay. L set into an atom, right? Like configuration, like in setting, and position of process. Process communication lines, ice interference. Let's get a cell track. Okay, assign locations and formula equations. Okay, this is wire indicators. Okay, got calculation. Now we got platforms, set position locations. Now we got seed pods. See that had changeable various line attractions. Direct lines, the highest interference. Now we got tethers and line rotation surface, right? It's all inside location your settings to your brain. Look, intelligence. See the face? So it's more fun when you just have fun with it, right? I'm just showing you how, what cells do and why you have the atoms and why you have molecules, right? Molecules is constantly putting things together, okay? That's what it does through triangulation. It puts everything all together, right? The atom put the center of everything all together. That's what the atoms do, okay? And so once you understand that, then you understand why you have the atoms, molecules, and cells. The cells protect everything around the system. Okay, so it's in front of everything. It's the division lines of its wall. It protects everything of its structure, right? So it's not location your dietary, immune, or your nervous system location sending the travels point lines of graph communications, right? So it's really interesting when you look at the cells and when you look at the atoms, the molecules, how it comes in structures, right? Cells modification lines of the high correlation setting into atoms and calculation line setting. CMA, right? Correlation settings, line condition setting, MA, line rotation surface awareness. Mind of collaboration, AMC, right? Track calculus lines of C, calculus line A, and M line coefficient setting. Track location lines puts lines of E, R, A in camera correlation setting and photo ops. That puts lines of communication setting in travel position operation. So getting in direct line signals is really understand why you have these inside you. And it puts everything in information, location, and grounds, right? Okay, so it's all of the process of travel. That's all it is in line condition setting. Let's go through two line settings, all set locations. Let's start with that, right? Now that position locations, let's go through this. Okay, let's just start with this. What's going on here, right? Okay, and then we go through this. Okay, I'm just showing you exactly how this all works. Inside calculation setting, what's going on in through traction, right? So everything's traveling, constantly traveling, but you understand why it's traveling and where is it traveling to. Well, it's all through your intention, what you want to do with these things, informations, right? You want to go through the ground lines. You want to route the routers and line condition setting position with the program. You want to direct lines to high line cycles, of course, on the track case in the system. You want to set up electrical line and fusion lines, green lines, adaptation lines, hierarchical setting. Or do you just want to expand the routes and line position of its program, okay, to calculation system? Now, through calculating line centers, data highways, right? So that position lines that puts everything up together. Atoms are inside, molecules are inside, they're all inside location in your system. Okay. So you have to understand how this all works, guys, right? Let's look at the tree formation, right? Out of 4 line split line at different lines of angle, right? Location of the system, right? Through calculations, right? So tubing lines of travel, line communication setting, line position, all operation lines. Cells communicates its settings, puts all lines of highest interference, puts all communicates in position location plasma lines into wall indicators. That's what it does in line setting location in the system. You have to truly understand what goes on in location inside your body, right? Sets lines of bridge, correlates to track interference. Now, getting that position lines of highest interference, cells come in, white cells, and you got the red cells, correlated track interference, direct lines modification. Travel lines of highest interference, operate the cycles, correlation interactions. Direct lines modification, scan lines, high correlation, scan communications, inside position operation, right? So when you understand the assembly line of view, everything comes in from an initial location of balance in settings. You understand how they operate, the line communication settings when you work with the cells and the atoms and the molecules. Like coordinate lines of E, our line can say you got camera, right? Coordinate track lines, open signals, open panels, inline rotation surface, and track location. Says communication lines of grounds, says communication lines of opening, says communication lines of atom, one rotation surface, and traction. Okay? So it's very powerful when you start recognizing that, right? This is what goes inside your body. Okay? That's what I mean. You have to understand, this is all lines of the communication of the avatar and the VR system, guys. The VR system, how it modifies, right? So exactly what the cells are doing. They create the bridging, right, through satellites and Wi-Fi's. Interactions, the molecules create the structures, the modification of teleportation. Okay? Okay, the cells are the wall dividers. They protect the image line, screen lines, and application of photo ops and camera setting location of your system. Okay, so that line can have highest interference. Positive equals lines of negative. We got a corresponding track lines position, right? Proton, neutron. Look at that. Communicate setting, all levels, line rotation surface, and track location. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Positive over negative, inline position of platforms, going in the same direct signal and set location, right? Process calculates line screens, highest interference, in position to its operation surface, and moon lines according to tracking position to its calculation setting. Right? Process communication lines of the sun, projector over projection. This is all done from inside you. Right? So you have to really understand why you have that inside you. Why is it so important? Right? What are the cells and the molecules atom? What are they doing inside my body? How do I use it through vessel? Right? That's all it is in line position location. They start off in all communication systems. They understand their identifications. They know where they are in their own space of time, right? But they have to understand why are they inside you? Why? You have to know that. You have to know that. And that embraces its position calculation system, all through track location. How it's all created through its alpha, right? It's alpha, it's delta, and it's theta, and it's location. Alpha, delta, theta. 3-track division, right? Alpha line. Oh, we got a C line communications to all levels of a T line screen. But what does it mean to you? All through wave central system. 3 lines of correlations, 2-track provision lines of cycles, and 1 center line interference and 3 calculation position of programs. Right? It's easy. How to modify that is all levels of travel in your binaries, and your transistors and your resistors. Translating, receiving, location. Right? Transmitting, receiving. Pi. Center operation of you evolving your system of travel. All through central system and position and navigation, teleportation. So that's all you're doing is you're creating higher levels of modifications as of travel. That's it, nothing else. Right? So the more you volume yourself, the more you stay in the center of yourself, you become the yin and yang of yourself in position of its location, setting, and track location. Boom. Okay, higher levels of teleportation. All right. But I think it's important to understand how to get in the basic grounds. Okay, why you have that, why everything's inside you, which is already in operation of its own system. Understand its data, understand its operation, understand its modifications, understand its mind, understand its awareness, understand its consciousness. Okay, why the atom, okay, and the molecule and position of your cells are inside correlations, AMC. Awareness, modifications of communication. Right? So that's where it basically comes in ground centers, because this is what we don't understand through formula, because this is what we do. We don't understand the platform. We don't understand the platform to travel. So if you don't understand the platform, you're always going to see the hand and not behind anything. See, that's what we don't understand through formula, because when it comes into that position locations, once you understand that, then you understand how 1 times 1 equals anything equals everything, which equals nothing. Okay. So getting that position locations, once you go beyond these things, then you understand the platforms at 24, 48, 72, and 144. Once you understand that, it becomes one clocking system of one calculation modification, one pi, one generation of one configuration, one line calculations in the face of recognition. But you stay in the center operation of U. That never leaves the system. Always stays in the center operation. Okay? So, it's the center of U. Understand the modifications of U through travel. Okay? So it location setting when you have your calculation modification with cycles, when you come into your cells, right? What are your cells doing, right? What are your cells doing? Okay, what are your cells doing inside your body? Okay, what are they doing inside your body? Are they rotating? Are they surfing? What are they doing through calculations? Going this way, going that way, going this way, going that way. What are they doing, right? So getting that position locations gets you a lot more understanding. You become your own formula. Equals lines of its own equation. Calculates modificate lines to your CP units. And calculates lines into your cities. Location area line communication to foundations. And track these lines and high area interference. Track dudes communicates lines and locations and your clocking system and travel. Okay. All right, that's it. We're good on 106 line screen and 21 lines of setting a volume of 6 locations. So that just gives you a basic ground line. How this all works, all formation lines of travel. Okay, why you have atoms, molecules, and cells. All right, setting lines of communication lines of screen adaptation lines of certification setting. Now you got position lines of atom, molecules, and cells. Now we're going to work line communication setting and program line settings, operation lines of certification system, protons, electrons, and neutrons. Okay, see you in 5. Doo-doo.